Blackhawks fans, welcome into the Four Feathers podcast. A little bit sooner than we'd usually be talking to you. It's Johnny Yanni alongside Ron Luce for a little bit of an emergency episode of the Four Feathers podcast. It's season 6, episode 11, business, not personal. Ron, I see you're in the Friday happy hour spirit.
I am. Cheers, sir. I'm not literally going to pour one out because I don't want to destroy all the technology on my desk right now, but metaphorical pour one out for Chad, Luke Richardson. Obviously, we'll get into it. But how are you doing, my friend? Happy Friday.
Yeah, I'm all right, Ron. I was definitely a little bit surprised. We'll get into our reactions to the news, the Blackhawks coaching shakeup. But yeah, we're back. We're just going to kind of run through reactions to this, what it means for the rebuild, Connor Bedard, Blackhawks play style in the immediate future. So appreciate you tuning in with us on a Friday happy hour time slot here. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at OnTap Sportsnet. Follow us on the socials at Four Feathers Pod and at OnTap Sportsnet. And as always, check out ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. All right, Ron, it wasn't a Friday news dump. It was a Thursday news dump, but right in that little time, that PR time slot, that organizations like to do this kind of stuff. How surprised were you yesterday when you saw the news, the notification that Luke Richardson's been fired effective immediately as the Blackhawks head coach?
I'll tell you what, I think it came a lot sooner than I was anticipating. I think at this point, given the nature of where things stand with the organization, obviously the team's not playing well. I was kind of thinking they were just going to let this ride, or at least let this ride maybe into the new year if they were going to can him early. Did not expect it to come as of December 5th, when there's still a hell of a lot of hockey to be played. Clearly, again, I think to me, this screams that something was going on behind the scenes that maybe seemed a little worse than to kind of the public eye. Maybe there was a disconnect that, Kyle Davidson could see more that maybe the fans didn't see between coach and player. But then you see some of the comments. You see Connor Bedard's comments about him having a good relationship with Luke Richardson and like some of these things. And you and I kind of briefly talked before the show, and I think you were spot on, Johnny. Like, this just kind of feels like a button to push to try to get something going in the right direction for the Blackhawks, because I really feel like, and I know there's a lot of fans out there that want to, point the finger at Luke Richardson saying he was the problem and yada, yada, yada. I said it on, the last show with Tony in my Ruffle Some Feathers. I think there's more accountability that needs to be taken in the organization than just the coach. It's the players, it's the GM who, thought bringing in a bunch of older veterans that are slow and washed up was going to make this team astronomically better this season. It just feels like kind of a scapegoat move by the Blackhawks, and one that moves the needle and trying to change something this season and get some better outlook for the rest of the year.
Yeah, so my initial reaction was definitely a little bit surprised. Obviously, you knew things were trending in the wrong direction. That's why, the back half of the title of this episode is Blackhawks business is down bad. It's more than just on the ice, too, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But anyway, I was a little bit taken back. I would have thought it would have been a little bit closer to the halfway point if they were going to do an in-season switch like you, Ron, because you think about it like, okay, well, is it, I think Kyle Davidson got asked about it today. Like, is it time to evaluate, this free agent crop that you brought in this summer? And he had basically kicked it down the road a little bit further. It's like, I get it. You can't fire the players, right? I mean, sure, you could waiver them, but you're not going to do that, right? It's always, I understand the coach is going to wear it, especially in a results-based business like this. Totally get it. But I thought it would have just been a little bit more of a run here, because you essentially got a quarter of a season with, at least in Kyle Davidson's mind, a more formidable roster, right, in which you would like to see those results. So I also agree, a little bit knee-jerk on that front, but I also think it was the only button Kyle Davidson could realistically push in terms of, make one decision, snap decision, and try to curry a little bit of favor, A, with the fan base, and B, try to turn the product around on the ice. I know that's his intention. I know it, but there's other factors at play here. It was beyond Luke Richardson. You got the CHSN situation. Fans are complaining every day, left and right, and rightfully so. They can't watch the team and all that. And then it's like, why would they want to? So maybe this drums up your ship for the next, couple of games here. I don't know if that happens, if people can access it. That is, there's with that problem at the forefront too. It just feels like fan interest is dying out a little bit. You got like a kind of a dead atmosphere in UC on a Wednesday night with an original 6 team in town. I know it was a little bit earlier start, but man, some of those pictures with some of the empty seats and all that, and there's no juice in the building. Maybe it stems down to the lineup too then, because very little seems like urgency among the players. So that is probably more so behind the scenes, things that probably won't be revealed, because I don't think hockey players are probably the most tight-lipped of any professional athletes, right? You're not going to get too many locker room leaks about things that go on. You're probably most likely going to get the stock answers, pucks in deep, pucks on net, all that good stuff. So I don't know. Definitely a little bit surprised. I thought it would have been more in that. Definitely after the new year, especially got an event coming up like the Winter Classic, things like that. But it is what it is. It was a button that Kyle Davidson could push. He did it. So let's talk about it. Kyle Davidson, what do you hear from him on this front?
Yeah, I think, it felt like just such a political answer from Davidson, and I didn't expect it to be anything else, like you said, right? Hockey players, hockey front offices are just, everybody's closed lip. It's the cookie cutter answers. It's, we thank him for his service and this, that, and the other. And I'm curious, what is going through Davidson's head right now, because at least I sit here personally and I say, well, you brought in these players that were supposed to help Connor Bedard. And yeah, Tavo had a really good start to the year, but has fizzled astronomically. Brossoit, we haven't even seen yet. Bertuzzi's been okay at best, right? I mean, none of these guys that they brought in have really been difference makers. Like, the guys that are doing things that are at least exciting to watch are guys that were already here. Ryan Donato, Jason Dickinson, Lucas Reichel. I would make the argument right now that his best 2 free agency signings were Pat Maroon and Craig Smith.
Yeah.
Given how things have gone on.
I think this has got to be the 3rd or 4th episode in a row that we've mentioned that Craig Smith is so far the best free agent signing that Kyle Davidson made this past summer, right?
And I think, and that kind of goes back to what we talked about with accountability on the last show. I know it's the easy answer is fire the coach, right? Like that's just the easy answer. And I get it. And sometimes it does spark things. I think in any sport, Johnny, hockey's the sport where we've seen interims spark a run. Now, obviously, I don't think any of us expect the Blackhawks to go to the Stanley Cup, but we've seen it, right? We saw it with the St. Louis Blues with Craig Berube taking over and them going all the way. We saw it with the Pittsburgh Penguins back in the day with their cup. They brought in Sullivan.
Jay Woodcroft getting canned last year up in Edmonton.
Yeah, Jay Woodcroft, and they go all the way to the Cup. Like, we've seen it with teams that are ready to win that have maybe a disappointing start to a season. We really don't often see it with bad teams that are probably just going to continue to be bad. So I think, to me, what this says, maybe, Johnny, and maybe this is a little bit of the tinfoil hat take here. Maybe this says that we're going to start seeing Rockford guys sooner than later, especially ones that feel like they're ready, i.e. Frank Nazar. Now, whether people agree or disagree with that is not the point here. But given Sorensen's familiarity with those guys in Rockford, especially the guys that have been there now for a few years, right? I mean, the Isaac Phillips of the world, the Nolan Allens of the world, things like that. And then you factor in just the familiarity with the organization. You sit here and you wonder, okay, what does this next step look like going forward for a Luke Richardson less Blackhawks team? And now I kind of, Johnny, because Luke Richardson's not there to deflect any of the blame, if the team continues to be bad, I'm starting to look at Kyle Davidson a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like, hey, man, did you set unrealistic expectations and just bail on your coach because they didn't go the way you expected them to? There's a lot to be said here. There's things that I think people have liked that Davidson has done. But some of the things so far that he's done that we expected better results from haven't yielded those results yet. So, I hear his answer. And Johnny, honestly, a lot of the guys outside of probably what like Foligno and Bedard were quoted saying about the firing, like they're all just political answers. Like it's exactly as I expected. I don't learn anything from them. We all know that Davidson expected this team to be better. Of course he did, because he went and spent money in free agency and brought in new faces and things like that. But that doesn't mean that's always going to work. And it feels like Richardson was kind of canned prematurely. I mean, this was technically his last season. There was a 4th year, I believe, option on his contract, is what Frank Saravelli reported. But outside of that, it was, this was kind of his final year. And, maybe Kyle Davidson just said, you know what, fine. We're not getting the results that we thought we were going to get from you, Luke, after 3 years. We're going to hit reset and see what happens. And I think now it's, if nothing else, Johnny, there's a little more scrutiny on Kyle Davidson now for the rest of the season. Obviously, there's
I think
that you can do.
That should have been in lockstep from the beginning with these guys. After signing this crop from the beginning of the season, but I get it. It's, the GM's not getting canned 3 years into a rebuild. The head coach very much so can. So that, but once again, the button that could be pushed got slammed.
Absolutely. Slammed quickly and with a lot of force. Definitely.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that within Davidson's quotes, and he makes points. It's a results-driven business. I don't want anyone to misconstrue this. It's a results-driven business, and we've seen it in other sports as well. The head coach is very likely to fall on that sword first, right? But I just want to say that the sword was sharpened by a lot of factors within the Blackhawks organization, both on and off the ice. Players played a part in that. Kyle Davidson played a part in that. Management played a part in that. Upper management played a part in that. And it happened to come crashing down. No, get me wrong. Luke Richardson did some of that his own. He did some wielding on that thing. But, with where they're at right now, a few games go a different way. Are we even talking about this right now? I don't know. You certainly can say to Davidson's credit here, the execution throughout the month of November has been poor. We've seen multiple times Blackhawks take a lead even. They've scored first in several games, and they've been tied, going into the third period or just down 1 goal. Numerous occasions they haven't been able to get over the hump, and a lot of that is probably the result of Luke Richardson's defensive system, the 1-2-2, right? It's essentially what he installed, and I understand it's going to be sort of a boring style of hockey. Think about it from Luke Richardson's standpoint, though. Now, he's got all these blemishes from the first 2 years, just because the roster that was fielded was very poor, built to lose. And now he looks at his collection of guys and says, can we get in a track meet with, other teams, and can we score with the best of them? He says, no, we can't. So we're going to try and lock them down. And the few times that they did execute it, it worked. They beat some of the best teams in the league. Florida, Dallas, Kyle Davidson even cited those. So give him credit for at least, pointing out those ones. But it's games like the one against Anaheim, where he had 2 leads at various points through that and then collapsed in the second half of the game. You saw the sloppiness at the end of the Boston game, especially a too many men penalty as you're trying to pull the goalie. That was quite literally the last straw in terms of on ice things that happened for Luke Richardson. So my point here is that there is a whole pool of blame, a whole village that built this sword, and Luke Richardson fell right on it, shoved in the back by Kyle Davidson onto it. That's just how I see that process playing out there. I understand it. Sports, it's a business. It's a results-driven business, most importantly. But a lot of factors at play, and Anders Sorensen coming in here, he said maybe a little bit of a new coach bump, maybe freeze him up a little bit. We'll talk about what his objectives are in a few minutes here, Ron. But it's not going to magically make this team, super competitive. It's not going to make. They're probably still going to. Honestly, they're probably going to have more blowouts coming up, I would imagine, if the style that he wants to implement is implemented like it will. Now, again, you probably score some more goals, which I think is probably the important thing here. We will get to how it affects Connor Bedard specifically in the offensive attack as well. But you're going to go from losing games 3-1, 4-2 to losing 7-3, 8-4. I guarantee there's going to be some of those in here if what Anders Sorensen wants to employ gets executed on the ice, just because of the talent level that's there in the roster that Kyle Davidson built.
And I think the biggest key to that, Johnny, I think is something that Blackhawks probably want to see. And this is something I think that we really just started to see more of this year, I think, than any other season, was kind of just that lack of discipline. And it's not necessarily like lack of discipline of taking bad penalties per se, but it's just like you said, the too many men on the ice penalty, right? That's just a pure lack of discipline, lack of focus. letting especially bad teams back into games when they have no business being in games. I think it was that really contributed a lot to why this season Richardson had the kind of the spotlight on him and more scrutiny perhaps than years past. I hope that's something that changes under Sorensen, right? Like, I think that's the biggest key here at the end of the day is, will that change? Can we see an instance where, like you said, maybe they just start playing a little bit more disciplined hockey? And sure, they're probably going to get blown out a lot more. I totally agree with you there. I think you're 100% spot on. I think we're going to see more games that feel like track meets that are very one-sided track meets over the course of the rest of the season. But I would at least hope that they just play a better brand of hockey along the way. I think we all know that this is a far less talented team than most teams in the NHL. But as long as they start to take those tangible steps in the right direction, and you get some more of that veteran leadership, being veteran leadership and stepping up and really kind of taking over at times, I think that's at least going to give people and fans more incentive to watch the team, because then you're going to start to see those highlights. I think you're going to start to see more of Connor Bedard making the highlight reel plays, right? The things that people are itching and dying to see as a part of this rebuild, knowing that they're going to be bad. And I think that's what they lost with Richardson. And that's probably part of the reason that this decision ultimately happened. That's what I want to see, Johnny, going forward here with Sorensen. But I think you've laid them out perfectly in our rundown. And I think it's probably a great time to talk about those. Kind of some of what are the things that we can expect now as Blackhawks fans with Anders Sorensen taking over as that coach.
Yeah, right. So part of what I mentioned there, and it's not to say that this is, I think in the long run for what we're looking at here, especially, with some of these young skill forwards and defensemen that can move the puck and move their feet well too. This will probably suit them better in terms of the style that they want to play. So I want to say I'm not boo-hooing this, but it's a matter of implementing it and then, kind of licking your wounds along the way, because there will probably be some ugly moments that result from this. But entertain you with after just, one practice and then kind of a post-practice media scrum that Sorensen had. He wants to implement a more flowing offensive system, utilize speed, encourage defensemen to join the rush, increase aggressiveness in the neutral zone. He says, defend on our foot with our forecheck versus waiting. I think that one will be one of the key differences, whereas the 1-2-2 is more designed to trap through the middle of the ice, right, instead of going trying to force turnovers up there. But once again, you get too deep in, get below the puck, then coming the other way could present some problems there. Just saying. On lines, he says chemistry is a big part of it. We want to be patient with some of the guys, but there has to be accountability too. If you're not playing the way we want you to play or not putting the effort in, there are times you have to change the lines. He also added that he'll meet one-on-one with Bedard, but a key point of emphasis he said we have to find a way for him to get the puck in motion, which all this sounds great on paper. Totally, in theory, this should at least spark, the development that people have been wanting to see in year two for Connor Bedard as an offensive attack overall, because you're going to have some of these supporting cast members join them, presumably at some point this season, in terms of your Frank Nazar, and other guys that are down on the farm there. You get Lucas Reichel a little bit more involved, a guy who is here, although he was still on the fourth line today. I think if Richardson left, people that have mutiny, but neither here nor there, Ron. Your thoughts when you hear that kind of rundown of list of what Sorensen's looking for objective-wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it all sounds nice in concept, right? I think Blackhawks fans probably, honestly, Johnny, I think some of what maybe was lost on the fan base was kind of the Luke Richardson system of it's going to be boring hockey at times, and you're not going to get excited about it often. They're not going to score a ton of goals. Like, they're going to defensively lock down teams. Like, that's how they're going to have to play. I think even with, them getting blown, kind of the doors blown off. I mean, even though we've seen that a couple times this year where it feels like they've gotten the doors blown off a little bit, maybe they'll have a little bit of opportunity to come back in games, right? If it's, a 3-1 game going into, say, the second or third period, because right, there's a little bit more speed, because there's a little bit more forward focus. I think getting the play moving in the right direction. And like you said, the biggest key is the development aspect. And I think that goes beyond the young guys, for, a variety of reasons. But the most important one, development in terms of like Anders Sorensen saying, chemistry, right? This team has looked just out of sorts the whole freaking season, right? Nobody looks comfortable together. Nobody looks like they're getting anything going outside of like your defensive groupings, right? Dickinson and Anderson, Reichel, Smith and Maroon on the fourth line. So you sit here and you wonder, like, does that maybe just start helping Connor Bedard find kind of that groove from last season with a Philip Kurashev again? Does that help him with a Tuvo Teravainen or a Bertuzzi? Does this still help Ryan Donato continue to be a good hockey player? Because right now he's on a career scoring pace with his 10 goals already this far into the season. I just hope it helps everybody on the roster develop a little bit in the terms of just developing into what this team should be able to become. They're a better hockey team on paper than they were the last 2 seasons. I think we can all say that.
Yep.
Are they, light years better? No, but they're better. It would just be nice to start seeing them play a little bit better. And you know what, Johnny?
Yeah.
You mentioned how like this team can beat some of the really good teams like Dallas and Florida and guys like that, but then lose to teams like Anaheim and Columbus. I would be okay if that's flip-flopped the rest of the way. Like, go beat the doors off of the Blue Jackets, the Ducks, just maybe the Nashville Predators right now who are down bad and look like they might be entering a rebuild soon. Like, go beat those teams. But like, if Edmonton comes in and you lose 5-0, cool, whatever. It's Edmonton. Like, you should lose.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we saw with Richardson that was maybe infuriating because it's like you could beat the good teams, you can't beat the bad teams. Sometimes if you flip that and it just becomes a track meet where it's a 6-5 game, that could be good for guys like Connor Bedard who might have a 4-point night in a game like that.
Yeah, right. It is. You're just getting into the trading chances game, and then you're putting a little bit more pressure on your goaltenders, and you are, opening yourself up to rushes against. I'll just say that. However, on the opposite end, if you are generating more of those chances on your part, then you obviously have more chances to score. So it's not rocket appliances on that front run. I just have just picking out 2 of these notes here. Increase aggressiveness in the neutral zone. Okay, I totally get it. You're going to try and spring things going the other way, but overplaying that will probably get you out of position more often than not. And then the recovery could be a scramble as you're transitioning back into the defensive zone. So this is on personnel. Is Tyler Bertuzzi committed? Is Taylor Hall, someone like this, committed to being a little bit more, aggressive in the neutral zone? If defensemen are going to step up and poke through, what happens when they get burned back? Is there going to be someone on the back door? Or are we just in full flight attack mode? These will be things that we have to see. I don't know how it's going to play out, how the personnel will adjust to this. There'll probably be some sort of, period of getting acclimated to it, I would imagine, here coming up. But a lot of it's on personnel, defend on our foot with our forecheck versus waiting. Okay, I get that. That's a mentality part. You're going to go and try and hound the puck a little bit more, force those defensemen behind the net to go and make a quicker pass and, hopefully intercept it as it's coming up there. But once again, if you get below the puck, then we've talked about the speed on this roster. Sure, Taylor Hall can burn a little bit. Connor Bedard's are okay wheels, but your Tyler Bertuzzi's of the world, your Teuvo Teravainens, if that happens on that forecheck, could very likely end up in a rush chance going the other way. Like I said, this is all in an attempt to increase the offense. I think that is just going to be something that I will be watching closely because they could execute under Sorensen's system there. But if they fail to win those board battles too, well, he said, effort will go a long way here. Well, they better be doing some board battles in practice because they weren't winning many of those, especially in terms of forechecking and 50-50 pucks there under Luke Richardson. So maybe Anders Sorensen is able to draw that effort out of him. I really hope he is. That'd make for much more entertaining hockey for Hawks fans here. But at some point, it's got to come down to the players being willing to execute that. And if Taylor Hall, by all, this is all just speculation, but, everybody made a big deal out of it because he got healthy scratch, right? If he's tuning out Luke Richardson, is he really going to listen to a developmental coach like Anders Sorensen, an AHL guy? I don't know. I'm just asking a question. I don't know the answer. We'll find out in the coming days.
Yeah, I think that's really the important key there, Johnny. Like you said, are the players going to buy in? Because now the accountability shifts. This can no longer be, well, it's Luke Richardson's fault. He's not here anymore. This accountability now lines up with the players for the rest of the season. Because let's be real, Sorensen's probably not going to get the head coaching job after this season. If I'm a betting man, Davidson does everything he can to get him back in Rockford going forward next year, because I think he's done a really good job as an AHL developmental coach. But they just want to keep kind of, the integrity of the organization together and keep the, kind of the cards in the house type thing in terms of who they promoted. But now it's on the players. Like, you have to just go out and execute. You have to go out and be scorers. You have to go out and be players that are going to make a difference, because like Kevin Patterson says here, 5-on-5 is up to the players. Say what you want about the coach, but Luke just put things that you can coach power play, PK, and defense. And yeah, the Hawks have been really good. The PK looks great. The power play has been okay, but like better than most people probably presumed. 5-on-5 is a lot up to the players. You just got to go out and play hockey. And that's kind of what, like, I've been saying a little bit with the accountability thing all season. Like, they still have to go out and get the job done.
And maybe this does flip a switch around. Maybe it does. I think that's the goal. That's what Kyle Davidson's hoping for by making this move here. It's up to the players. It's up to how it's executed on the ice, because it's not going to be a magic switch as much as you want it to be. Make one move and this is what it does. Hopefully it does start generating things. And then, what I think another thing too is maybe guys get more confidence as they see the puck go in the back of the net more. That may be another factor to it. There's just something to be said about a voice getting stale in the room. I totally understand that. But that comment that Kevin Patterson made there, it's a lot of it's up to the players. And are they really going to be bought in under Anders Sorensen? To be determined.
To be determined indeed. But it gives you another kind of set of storylines now. I think the large focus of Blackhawks fans has to shift here. Now you're keying in on certain players. You're looking for development of the young guys, and you're looking if these veterans step up and actually play like veterans. I'm going to keep referencing it until I'm blue in the face, but like on my ruffle some feathers, my entire thought was accountability was, Taylor Hall's making $6 million this year. Foligno's making 4.5. Dickinson's making 4.25. Like, you got a lot of guys getting paid a lot of money. Bertuzzi and Teravainen are making almost 5.5 each. Like, you guys got to step up and be the big guns. This can't all just fall on Connor Bedard and Lucas Reichel.
Is there like an incentivized structure to Taylor Hall's deal? Does he get like $50K for every turnover at the blue line, or what?
Shit, if he does, he's going to be making a lot of money this year.
That's what it feels like, man. That's what I'm saying when I'm talking about, some of it being on the players there. And this isn't the single Taylor Hall out. I understand it's been a struggle for him with the ACL and trying to come back and all of this. And then you get healthy scratch. It's not an ideal set of circumstances there, but he himself before the season was a guy that's saying like, oh yeah, I want to get back to like 30 goal caliber here. And it's like, once again, like his GM, Kyle Davidson, maybe setting a little bit expectations a little bit too high. That's what I've got there. So
well said, Johnny. Yeah, it's just it's a new focus now for the rest of the season. Now the rest of the season is purely what are the players doing on the ice? Do we see any of the kids later in the season? I think there's a good opportunity that we do see a couple of them. I don't think we see everybody, but we might see a few guys. And does it make a big impact? And does this team at least start playing a little bit better to where you can say, okay, they've made meaningful progress? Are they better at the end of the season than they are right now? I think that's the big key.
I fear, Ron, I understand he wants the overall health of the organization to be, trending positively, going to the, right place where they want development wise, results wise too. Like you said, want to see a step up. But I fear that, when you boil it down, Kyle Davidson probably just wants a little bit more excitement in the game, and he wants to see more goals. Can we market Connor Bedard better? Because come on, I'm going to bring it back to the back half of this episode title. Blackhawks business is down bad right now. I know they got the Winter Classic coming up. That'll be a little bit of a bump in there. So they're hoping for, a new coach bump to kind of guide them there through the end of the 2024 calendar year. But it seriously feels like that's kind of what they're going for. It's okay. We could deal with 8-2, the 7-4 losses here. But as long as Connor Bedard's got the celly that we could put on the celly of the week with our Bud Light partnership, that's what matters. That's just what it feels like. I'm not trying to put these words in Kyle Davidson's mouth, but that's really what it feels like. Just trying to like revive it. They got the shocker cables trying to just revive it. Something on the season, and it's laying flat, pretty much dead on the table right now.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, they want some kind of spark, and this was the button they were able to push in getting rid of Luke Richardson. Now we wait and see, right? Did the ejecto-cedo button work, or did it not? And I think that's going to tell a lot about kind of what the pressure is on KD going forward, but also on who wants to coach this team. Like, this is also kind of a tryout for the organization to get a quality coach in here, because like you said, Johnny, if it's all just about trying to revive the business side of the organization and not the hockey side, no good coach is going to want to come here,
Right.
even if it isn't original six organization.
No one will ever admit that, Ron. I'm just speculating here, but you saw with the kind of downturn that they had with the kind of CHSN rollout fiasco. There was a story back during like preseason training camp that like dollars are down, right? It's not at the end of the day, it's still a business. So I'm going to take that into consideration when I look at organizational changes as well. Fair or not.
And you know, I there was an article that Tony sent to me. I believe it was through The Athletic, that the CHSN debacle, like, players know that this could like put the organization back into oblivion again, where nobody cares about them in the city of Chicago anymore. It's history repeating itself. It's Papa Wirtz not wanting to put the team on TV. That's what it feels like right now in a lot of ways. Oh, you want to come see the Blackhawks? Come to the UC. Well, they suck. Nobody wants to go right now. You have to wonder, Johnny. I don't think, you know, your speculation is off.
It's a little tinfoil. It's tinfoil because I'm, you know, kind of, you know, putting some speculation out there. But when you go and connect the dots, like I said, you got to remember, it's a business at the end of the day, and business is down bad right now.
If you connect the dots in your old connect the dot books as a kid, it's starting to actually look like a real picture. It doesn't just look like a bunch of lines.
Yeah,
so I think you're on the
right. Maybe not fully formed yet, but it's
but it's getting close. It's starting to starting to resemble a dinosaur, or the Hamburglar from McDonald's or something like that.
Right, exactly. I think that's a good place to leave it, sort of big picture wise here on the Four Feathers podcast. We appreciate everybody who jumped in for this little Friday happy hour emergency podcast quasi sort of setup that we had going on here. Make sure you're subscribed over on YouTube at OnTap Sportsnet, and give us a follow on the socials at Four Feathers Pod at OnTap Sportsnet, and check out OnTapSportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports, literature, and podcasting needs. Ron, I'll do it for this episode. You have a good rest of your weekend, rest of your Friday evening. Sir. Until next time, let's go Hawks.
Let's go Hawks, baby.